while Hillary and Lauren are filming Melissa murdering Van, I'm actually off camera in the kitchen watching it happen.
When Shauna screams, "Where's Natalie?" in the finale hunt, there's like a really compelling look on your face where it's kind of like you're getting what you deserve. So was that choice something that you decided? Was it in the script?
That was something that I decided to do. But one of our showrunners who directed episode 10, he on the day came up to me after we shot that and he said, "That was cool, like you looked really happy," which was funny, I thought. But the reason for that look is that obviously there's this plan behind Shauna's back to repair the sat phone and call for help. And in episode 9, we see that Van has hidden the sat phone and is like getting it out, trying to fix it, doesn't have the right parts. And then Misty finds her doing that, and then Misty becomes involved with the black box that she's hidden, and then Natalie discovers her. So Van is like a key ingredient of the sat phone repair plan, and at the start of episode 10 we see Van and Misty kind of like swap notes about like what's working, like have we fixed it yet? So she's in on that. I mean, the plan to repair the sat phone happens largely off screen because it's really conspiratorial and sort of technical. But the strong implication is that it's the three of them working on that. So Van knows that Natalie has like snuck off to call for help because she's been a part of the like sneaky plan to make that happen. So Van knows where Nat is. And then when Shauna discovers that Hannah's taken her place and screams, "Where the f*** is Natalie?" It's like, I know where Natalie is. I know exactly where Natalie is, and we got you. We got you and we're getting out of here. So that was cool to get to play a little bit.
Yeah, again, very satisfying to finally see Shauna lose, especially after, well, because of the fact that she thwarted their rescue for the first time. Adult Shauna says in her final words of the season that the teens were having like the time of their lives in the woods. Do you think that literally anyone would agree?
Well, you know, it is funny to see Melanie perform that monologue kind of intercut with so many of us having like a really miserable time. But I do think that this show has always really intentionally played with this kind of push and pull thematically as to whether or not there is something liberating about the Yellowjackets' time in the wilderness, whether or not there is something to miss about it. I mean, obviously what they're going through is horrible and deeply traumatizing and wouldn't be wished on anybody, but something that we revisit, particularly in the adult timeline over and over again, is like, oh, is there something that we miss about that? Was I more myself? Like, is there something desirable or freeing about what we went through? Do I recognize myself now that I'm back and away from who I was back then? And then with Van, it's interesting because I think over the course of these past 3 seasons, you really do see her in the 90s undergo a really substantial shift. Lauren's Van wants nothing to do with the wilderness at all. And certainly in season 2, I think maybe like young Van might not necessarily use the word like fun, but I think was very settled in like, we live here and that's fine and that's acceptable and I can be strong about it. Like, has made an acceptance of what it takes to be in the wilderness. But over the course of season 3, particularly with the introduction of the possibility of going home, like, that is where Van really makes a shift to, this is intolerable, I can't live like this anymore. So I think the back and forth about that is really intentional on our show.
We know a bit about what happened to break up Van and Ty after they got back from the wilderness, but do you know how long they stayed together after that? Like, do you have a sense of the timeline?
Not in any kind of specifics. As an actor, I think about it a lot, and I, like, if and when we get to do more of this, I am really looking forward to arriving at some events that we know are down the pipeline for these characters. I mean, we know that everybody ends up at Shauna's wedding. We know that Lottie is institutionalized by her parents. Melissa fakes her own death at some point. Like, and then at some point, Van and Ty separate. At some point, Van goes off on her own, and at some point, she gets sick. So, I mean, there are these threads kind of like loosely placed throughout the show. And I'm as interested in those as I think the audience is, but I don't necessarily know more about the specifics than the audience does. But I think about it a lot, and we all talk about it a lot. Something that I've always thought is really interesting is the insinuation that the Yellowjackets became tabloid fodder when they made it back. And so then I think about like what the tabloid media landscape in the late 90s was like in North America, and what that would mean for a group of young women who've been through something horrible, what that would mean for Van and Thaisa, who are young lesbians, like what that would mean for Van as somebody who has visible scars on her face. Like I think that is fascinating, and I'm strangely looking forward to it.
When you're filming your scenes with Lauren this season, you're of course feeling Van's feelings, but underneath all of that, what was Liv feeling as you filmed that death scene with Lauren?
It was very meta. It was very layered, the filming of episode 9. I mean, the scenes that Lauren and I shared was something that we asked for. We wanted the opportunity to work together. If it was interesting to like the writers and how they were planning to write the episode, and luckily it was. So getting to work with her is something that I'm really proud of and really grateful for, and getting to share this character with her generally is something that I will really treasure for the rest of my career. So as young Van in those scenes, like young Van feels a lot of admiration and love for who Van becomes as an adult. The fact that Van survives is incredibly meaningful to Van in the 90s, and also to me. So me as myself, there was a real feeling of like looking after Van Palmer, like taking care of Van Palmer in the final moments of her story. It was very emotional.
And I know that like Steven Kruger was given about like a month's heads up, or a couple months heads up, that his character would be dying this season. Did you also get that heads up, even though it's like Lauren playing who would be like the character actually dying?
Yes. I found out at the beginning of filming season 3, and at the time they were still deciding how and when it was going to happen. And then over the course of filming season 3, the showrunners were generous enough to let me talk to them a few times as to some things that like I wanted to avoid, or like some things that I thought were thematically important, or just like some questions that I had, and that was very meaningful to me too, to have a heads up about it, and to feel that like I could say my piece or participate as an actor in a small way, because this character means so much to me and always has. So I got to look after her in the show and then also in real life.
And what were some of those thematic things that were important to you that you mentioned to the showrunners?
Yeah, so I think people know in general at this stage that like Van's involvement in the story as it is now was not part of the original plan in Yellowjackets. Like I was hired as a guest actor in season 1, and I was only supposed to be in I think 7 episodes. I wasn't supposed to be in the full thing. But over the course of filming season 1, they changed their minds and kept me on, and then brought Lauren on. So the decision to keep me on, and the decision to bring adult Van into the story, and to have my Van avoid death when the plan had been for her to die, that created a sort of like accidental meta-narrative about Van being unkillable, or Van avoiding death over and over again. So one of the things that I spoke to them about was like Van's relationship to death, because of the kind of like meta decision to keep me on. Her relationship to death is unique. She has this really loaded relationship to death as somebody who's avoided it over and over. So if she's gonna die, I think her death has to be saying something specific about that relationship. Her relationship to death is significant, and it means something for that relationship to change. And you know, they were thinking about that as well, and we're on the same page about that. And so I wanted it to be something that couldn't have happened to anybody else. I wanted it to be about her. I didn't want it to be a rug pull or an accident. And luckily these were all things that I sort of said out loud, and then the showrunners were like, of course, totally, yeah, we're thinking about that. And it was, that was really gratifying. But I felt like protective, I guess, in a way, in a similar way to the way my character does in the scenes that she has with herself. So that was quite beautiful.
Yeah. And so was the wolf attack meant to be Van's death?
I don't know that for certain, but I think so. I remember getting the script for episode 7, and then getting a phone call from Ashley and Bart going like, "You're not dying. It's don't panic. This isn't it." And I sort of went, okay, cool. all right, we'll see what happens then.
So is that when you knew that you were no longer a guest star? Like that call was like, oh, I'm staying.
Sort of. The actual shift. Well, first of all, this is so inside baseball. Over the course of season 1, it's like I read The Wolf Attack, got that phone call, and then was contractually added into the rest of the season. And then at the end of season 1, I got a call saying, if we get renewed, we want to make you a regular. And I was like, all right, work.
So what is it like on filming, like on set for filming the characters' deaths? Like, were you there for Lauren's death scene, even though you weren't like in the scene?
Oh yes, me and Jenna Burgess, who plays young Melissa, we both went that day. Jenna wanted to have some FaceTime with Hillary and kind of like connect about Melissa and Van's relationship. And then I went because I just really strongly felt that I needed to be there, that I wanted to be there with Lauren. And so Jenna and I were sitting at Video Village watching the two of them work. And then at one point, Lauren comes out and grabs me and says, come and be in here. Come and be in here with me. So while Hillary and Lauren are filming Melissa murdering Van, I'm actually off camera in the kitchen watching it happen. Which again was this like fascinating kind of meta layer to what was happening, because later on in the episode, as young Van, I'm sat in the plane watching that happen. We're watching it together. So it was sort of eerie in this beautiful way.
That's so cool to know. Like Van is there at all times. Like both versions of them are always there. That's so cool. How would Van feel about Ty eating her heart? And how does Liv feel about that moment?
Oh man. Yeah. I remember reading episode 10, and I read that scene, and then I walked into the room my partner was in, and they were like, what's wrong? And I was like, they rolled her up in a rug. They rolled her up in a rug and buried her. Tawny's so incredible. I think Tawny is just a phenomenal actor. So it was, I'm like so compelled by her performance watching that scene. And then thinking about it now, like if and when we get to make more of the show, it's significant to me, plot-wise, that Van's body is buried in the ground in a rug with her heart missing. And she's a recognizable yellow jacket who is a small business owner who would be missed. So I think that is a pretty crazy smoking gun. And I'm not sure exactly what the plan is in the present day timeline, but I think that is an interesting opportunity to kick a few things off, potentially. So we'll see.
Yeah. And I wondered too, like, we haven't gotten like funerals for these adult characters who have died. Like their bodies are scattered. Like is Van just in like an unmarked grave on the side of a road somewhere?
I think so, yeah. Yeah. I think so. It certainly seems like it.
We need funerals for these people.
Yeah.
What do you think it is about like cannibalism and like eating hearts and everything that's so appealing to like queer and sapphic viewers?
Well, there's a lot in there about desire, right? And there's a lot in there about the overlap of desire and horror, which I think like can be very charged and loaded for queer people who potentially have like dealt with a sense of shame or horror around the development of their own desires, depending on their upbringing. And I think cannibalism can be about a few things thematically very easily. Like it can very easily be about religion in a sort of like ritual consumption, like transubstantiation way. It can very, very easily be about sex in terms of like a desire to like be with, be in, or consume somebody. And it can very easily be about violence. I think in our show, it's kind of about all three. In that like these are characters who do kind of build their own belief system and ritual framework that involves the cannibalism they're committing, and I think it does involve sex because there is a sort of desire, power, push and pull happening with a lot of these characters, and it's about power, and And I think that is a very rich combination for queer audiences and the queer characters in the show. And it's something that I think about a lot.
Of all the things that Van could ask Hannah about the outside world, Van asks if Mulder and Scully got together. What other shows does Van miss?
What other shows does Van miss? What I think about with Van a lot is actually what movies she would be missing or would be really excited to see. And I see people online joke about that a lot too. It's like, R.I.P. Van, you would have loved like Bottoms. Or,
Oh my God, Van would love Bottoms.
You would have loved The Matrix. It's like, yeah, absolutely she would have.
Yeah, and how would Van react to seeing Gillian Anderson kiss David Duchovny at the Emmys before her own boyfriend?
Well, or crucially, how would Van react to? Oh my God, I think the image is from like a Hollywood party somewhere, but it's Gillian Anderson and I think Kate Blanchett, and they're like, you know the ones I'm talking about, right? They're
Yes,
like holding shoes in their hand,
Yes,
like walking
yes,
out
I
of a
do.
door together. I think I would love to see Van's reaction to those.
I would too.